Alright, before I get into this video, show you guys what I ended up doing with the truck for the fourth engine replacement or whatever it's been. I just wanted to kind of summarize stuff real quick for you guys. What I've been doing is collecting basically these junkyard engines and stripping them down into parts. Basically all I can use is the short block, rod, crank, pistons. But what I do is break them and then end up selling all the parts for more than what the engine costs. So I'm out just time, I guess, which is probably more valuable than the money that I'm getting for it. But hey, I make like 10 bucks an hour to do this, so not too bad. At least I'm making some money, not spending it. But bottom line is, I've got a video to show you guys where I'm gonna send another 351 to its grave. The old engine that I took out suffered the same number 2 rod bearing failure as last time. This time in much shorter time. The first one was like a 50,000 mile life, and then this one was like 2,000 miles. So obviously I damaged the rod, and replacing the crank and bearings just didn't get me where I needed to be. So it absolutely wiped out the crank and the rod this time. I was able to actually sell the block, the heads, everything else, even the good rods and pistons off that engine. And I did pretty well on it. Those blocks still fetch like 500 bucks, which is kind of crazy, in good shape like that one was. So fortunately it didn't spit a rod out. But yeah, that's what happened with that. Now I want to show you guys what I ended up doing to get another engine going in the truck. Here at the junkyard, about to pull this beautiful 351. Might have to cut this core support out, but the transmission's already out. Doesn't have any miles, but it's a 95 F-150 automatic. Making some progress here. I'm trying to get that radiator out. It's totally smashed up, but it's coming out of there. Alright, moving right along. So this thing's got a cracked manifold, one broken stud in the head right there, another one right here, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that probably 1 or 2 of these corner ones will break off. Usually in the front they like to get stuck and snap. This engine's a little different because it's got a crossover tube. I haven't seen this before. Looks like it's been plugged up on this side. You can see there's a plug there and a plug there, I believe. So somebody's disabled it. My truck doesn't have that. Looked like it also had a smog pump, potentially. Yeah, there it is, down there. Don't need that either, so I'm gonna pull basically everything off, get it down to a long block, and then see what I've got from there. The plans here, although this thing looks to be really well maintained, obviously it was in a wreck, and this got broken. There's a little collateral damage as well. But like the water pump looks new, the guy's got an Excel coil on it. It's got these E3 spark plugs, which I know aren't cheap. But this is probably the biggest issue on this side. That last bolt, it looks like somebody tried to repair it. That one's been helicoiled. That one's broken, and this one I could probably save, but I think these heads are gonna have to come off, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. So, also, I noticed this water pump got a little bent, doesn't turn anymore from the wreck. So I'm going to finish pulling this front truss and balancer off, and then I'm going to start taking off the intake and take both heads off of it. Alright, I got this water pump off, and more bad news. So if you look, that thing is pushed in, and the reason is because it got pushed back. And it did that. Alright, so I got the heads off. See a little oil in that one. But this head gasket looks good. This looks like a factory head gasket. Kind of see in the corners there. But this is in fact a roller, so that's good. And it looks pretty clean inside actually. I don't know how that got scraped. I just took off the head and didn't put anything in there, so that's kind of weird. Like I said, the front balancer is removed and the water pump cover got broken from the wreck. But this surprise would have cost me some time. So you can see how these pistons look in general. Cylinder bores are pretty glazed over. Not a huge ridge on top though, but this head gasket looks terrible. So it's all peeled in and there's oil inside the cylinder from removing it just now. It does look like it has a little more carbon, but yeah, it's probably a good thing I took these heads off. So next up is pulling the pan. I'm gonna flip it over, pull the cover off, pull the pan, and then I'll have everything I can use. All right, so I got the oil pan off, and thankfully no surprises in here. Everything looks as it should. The bottom end doesn't look like it's eaten any metal or anything. I don't necessarily see any bent rods, so my problem guy has been this one right here. This is cylinder number 2. It's got that R on it. So everything looks all right in here. It had that one piece rubber oil pan gasket, so I need to clean up all the residue from there. There's the head gaskets, that broken timing cover over there that I removed. And the bottom of the pan isn't too bad. I don't really see any metal, just a little bit of sludge, some chunks of stuff. There is that little plug right there, so that rubber plug right next to the drain plug. Junkyards sometimes do that to drain it faster, and I've actually had those plugs come out. Not really planning on doing anything with that. Just gonna clean up this thing and put some heads on it and keep going. Alright, so in addition to my brass wire brush, I also like this guy. This is a copper pipe that's been smashed and filed on the end. It works really good for scraping off gaskets, like this head gasket here. So what's nice about it is it's a little softer, so it doesn't necessarily cut into the metal, since it's a softer metal than the block, but it just helps keep down the mess. So after I scrape this, I will wire wheel the pistons and the surfaces on both sides and get back to you in a second. All right, we're about halfway there. So I've got this side scraped and wire brushed, and I got this side left to go. So this thing's a little grimy. I don't know how much of this I'll be able to take off without it ending up inside. So I think we're just gonna scrape her up and make it look about like that, put it back together. And there's a look at the cylinder walls and the pistons. And of course that's the before. Next up on the list is to check the piston to valve clearance. So I've got number 1 at TDC, got some stock push rods, and the gold lifter I made, which has washers stacked inside of the plunger. I went over this on the checking preload. So we're going to check lifter preload and piston to valve clearance. So I've installed the clay, and just from past experience, the exhaust valve somewhere over in here, it doesn't even get close to the piston. So we're just going to look at the intake valve. So I'm going to do both sides this time. Got clay on this piston as well. So I'm going to install that lifter, those push rods, the rockers. We're going to turn it over a couple times and then check and see what the pattern looks like on that clay. Alright, so I've got the head on with a few bolts, like half of them. Got the rockers assembled, and actually the preload looks acceptable. I'm not measuring it this time, but I was just eyeballing it. It's probably about 30 thousandths if I had to guess, so should be fine, especially for measuring this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over 2 rotations. Curiosity is killing me. I've got to take this rod out. I want to see the bearing and take some clearances. So we're going to go for this one right here, rod number 2, which is marked with an R. So I'm going to pull that one out and show you guys what it looks like. Hopefully nothing weird. Not trying to take all these out, just trying to see the general condition and maybe take some clearances here. Looking about typical there. You can see that wear ridge, and these ones F2TEAA. I think that's a different part number than the other rods, but there's oil rings. Actually at first they were kind of stuck, but now they're moving.
You can see they're kind of moving around in the groove, so hopefully none are stuck. I did notice these two rings gaps are lined up, which is weird. And next up I'm going to take this ring out and measure its gap in the bore and then put it back together. There's the bottom rod cap, and these both had an R stamped on the side right there. So yeah, let's check out this ring gap, and then I'm going to move those rings over and just drop it back in. All right, so there's that top ring, and I'm checking the gap. So you can see that this easily slides in there, and that is 25, 4, and 5, so 34 thousandths. That thing's definitely ready for boost, so I think I'll pull that ring out, put it back on the piston. Maybe I'll plastic gauge this, but probably not. I think I'm just gonna drop that piston right back in. So I think we got a good healthy bottom end here, guys. This thing's gonna be ready to do some damage. So wish me luck here. This is gonna be all that we see of these pistons, I hope. All right, it's back in its home. So I'm gonna put the rest of this back together. I did torque down the cap already. Just put it back right how it was, and now it is at 45 foot-pounds. I checked a couple other ones and they're in the same region. So yeah, another healthy bottom end. We'll see how this one runs. All right, so to prevent what you see right there, I am going to grind all these pistons in that spot. So I've kind of tried to mark it a little bit. It's mainly that corner. It's a little bit at the top here too. So I'm gonna go through one by one and grind all these and get back to you. I have my aluminum carbide in the die grinder. So that's gonna make quick work of those pistons. It's pretty big flutes on this thing. All right, so I moved a pair at a time up to top dead center, grinded those pistons, vacuumed out the mess. So I think I'll turn it upside down and rinse it out one more time, and then we can begin assembly. I've been thinking about cleaning these surfaces with something, but you know, I don't really want to put any more grit in it than I have to. I did probably get some aluminum in here inevitably that I'm not going to rinse out through this, but try to change the oil more frequently for a while. There's some sludge in there and stuff too in a few spots. All right, guys, the day has come. We are going to finally put this pile of parts back together. So I just wanted to go over a few things. I don't necessarily want to do a how-to on this. Some of you guys already seen this, and I just want to give you like a summary, I guess, of the things that I'm doing different this time. So right now I'm in the middle of checking the length for the head bolts. So let me show you what I've got going on here. So basically we're going with stock head bolts this time. Not only stock head bolts, but we're going to go with stock push rods too. So obviously I've still got the stock cam. So we're putting a little more stock into this engine, but don't worry, I have gone to a better head gasket this time, which is over here. So this one's actually about 10 thousandths thinner too. This is the Felpro 1011-2, which has a pre-flattened copper ring in here, and that is compared to the old PT1s I used to run, which are in this 302 with stock head bolts. These, and I mean, at first glance, I guess I haven't got this thing out of the package yet. Maybe I'll do that, but if you look here, this ring looks pretty thin. That one looks a lot thicker, and at first that got me concerned until I flipped it around and saw that's about the same as that. So anyways, the difference is we are going away from this head gasket this time, and instead of ARP bolts, studs, actually I had ARP half-inch studs, we're gonna run these stock bolts. So I want to make sure that I have enough length here that it won't bottom the bolt out before it clamps on the head. So I'm going to compare it to this. Of course, you add the thickness of the head gasket to it. So today is Saturday, and I would like to get this thing going by Monday. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me. I need to still do the freeze plugs and several other things that I haven't talked about yet. So I'm going to get to work here. I'll bring you guys along for the journey, and hopefully there's not any surprises here, and by the end of this we're going to see it run. So got them both out. There's still some debris. I'm going to wire wheel that out and vacuum it out. You can see there's like some scale in there. It's kind of loose, it just falls in. And oh yeah, got a little inside that motor. That's good. But this would have been a bad day if I chose to skip this, because these things are like this thickness throughout. So you can see that wall, which this thing looks fine from the outside. It still has that, but it punched right through. It's really thin. It's almost like pot metal. It looks like it came out of a sewer. So kind of surprised about that, but just gonna seal these up, use that 1-inch socket, and drive them home. Alright, there it is, complete. And as you can tell, I pushed this one in a little too far. This one's pretty good, but it's probably about 50 thousandths deeper than it was before. I'm not too worried about it. I think it's probably better that it's pressed in further too far than not enough, but next time I might do it a little different. Alright, so we're going to put this machined one on here with the pits in it. So I showed you guys some of that damage. You can see it, but this thing has new valves, so it should seal up. Here we go, highlights for the driver's side, I guess this would be. I did not machine the surface of the head. I did not check the surface. I just cleaned it up with some Scotch-Brite and degreaser. So those are the used valves, and got the head gasket in place. Also, this would be cylinder 5, 6, 7. 7's got some pitting on it. Not sure what happened there, but I never saw that on any of the other ones. So got this dropped in, and next up is to torque it down. And I present to you another boring V8. The heads are on this thing. As you can see, we got stock head bolts. Those are all torqued down. Top row got 115 foot-pounds, and the bottom got 105. So got all those springs shimmed. I've got all the rocker arms torqued to 20 foot-pounds. Got the stock push rods in there this time. Preload's a little bit more than what I was hoping for. It comes in at about 75 thousandths, but we're gonna call that good enough. So next up is to bolt the rest of the top end on, and then I got to start with the front as well. So I need to put the cover on, the balancer, the oil pan, and I got to change out that pickup tube because that thing is for a 4x4 pan, and I have to use the Fox style. There's those freeze plugs again. That one I pushed in too far. That one's pushed in too far too, but it's decent. And this is the progress from yesterday. So I've got the exhaust manifolds attached and bolted down with gaskets. I've got the spark plugs in it. Heads obviously bolted on, push rods, rockers, and the valve covers are torqued down. So right now I'm trying to decide if I want to silicone this oil pan gasket or if I just want to put it together dry this time. The instructions do say not to silicone it, and I've brought this up before. I obviously have siliconed it many times in the past, and the problem with that is that you just absolutely destroy it when you take it off. So according to them, they say right here, important, this molded rubber silicone gasket must be installed dry without any chemical adhesive. Well, I did that once on this 302 over here, sitting on the ground, and it leaked. So I took it apart and I actually reused the gasket, siliconed it, and it hasn't leaked. So I think I might just put it together dry just to try it that way, mainly because I don't know if I expect this thing to stay together all that long. So plan for today is to do that. Oh yeah, before I do that though, I'm going to show you, I did swap the oil pickup tube, so you can see it right there, torqued it down. I pulled the rear main cap off so I could get the rear main seal out and clean that crank real well. It's a lot easier when that cap's off of there, so that's taken care of. Need to put the rear main in. Got the intake over here, that's gonna go on next. Don't have any intake manifold gaskets, so I gotta get those today. I'm gonna bolt that on, and then I'm ready to bolt on the clutch and hopefully start it soon. Alright, here we go, the first start. Alright, here we go with another start. One of the plug wires wasn't attached on cylinder 8, and I just put everything back together to where nothing's going to get sucked into the fan or the bell turning except for maybe this oil line. Have to do something about that. Good thing I said that. Anyways. Go 301 665. We'll see how long this one lasts, but I'm gonna end it here now, guys. Hopefully some of you got some interesting information out of this.